Earth shook with fear as the alien fleet filled the night sky, 1,000 warships burning through the atmosphere to exterminate humankind in an inferno of plasma fire. Jeremy Holmes squinted at his laptop screen, graphs and numbers blurring together as he chugged his 6th Mountain Dew to stay awake. The digital clock blinked 2:14 a.m. in angry red digits. He sat alone at the Mauna Kea observatories on Hawaii's Big Island, combing through terabytes of data from the Kepler Space Telescope. Scrolling through rows of numbers, one unusual blip in the data caught his bloodshot eye. He zoomed in on the anomaly, a pattern of light pulses flashing from the direction of Vega, a star 25 light-years away in the Lyra constellation. "What the fuck is this?" Jeremy muttered, rubbing his eyes to make sure he wasn't hallucinating from too much caffeine and too little sleep. The light flashes pulsed in a steady, repeating pattern, too regular to be natural. He plugged the coordinates into the observatory's long-range telescope array and waited as the lenses swung into position with a mechanical groan. The image resolved on the screen and Jeremy's jaw dropped. A massive armada of alien ships swarmed around Vega, at least 1,000 vessels each stretching for kilometers. His hands shaking, Jeremy grabbed his phone and called his astrophysicist colleague, Dr. Ethan Nakamura. "Ethan, wake up and get your ass to JPL now. I just found a massive fleet of alien ships, and they're headed straight towards Earth," Jeremy yelled. They had less than 6 months to either establish peaceful contact or mount a defense of Earth against an invasion force that made human weapons look like cavemen throwing rocks. The fate of humanity hung by a thread. Chaos erupted in the streets of cities across the world as news broke of the impending alien invasion. People screamed in terror as they packed the roads, trying to flee. Grocery store shelves were swept clean as citizens hoarded supplies for the coming apocalypse. Fights broke out at gas stations over the last remaining drops of fuel. Governments struggled to maintain order amidst the anarchy. Jeremy's phone buzzed, an unknown number. He swiped to answer. "Jeremy Holmes, Ethan Nakamura?" a gruff voice asked. "Who is this? How did you get this number?" Jeremy demanded. "My name is Marcus Reynolds, former NASA. We need to talk now. Meet me at the Denny's off I-95, booth in the back. Come alone." The call ended abruptly. Jeremy and Ethan exchanged a look. They had to find out what this guy knew. 15 minutes later, they slid into the sticky diner booth across from Marcus, a haggard-looking man of about 45 with flecks of gray in his military buzz cut. "I'll cut to the chase," Marcus said. "That alien fleet you spotted? They're called the Xindi, a vicious race of conquerors. They have technology centuries beyond ours, weapons that can vaporize cities, shields that nothing we have can penetrate." "How do you know all this?" Ethan asked skeptically. Marcus leaned in. "Because for 20 years I was part of a black project called Odyssey, monitoring alien threats to Earth. We've known about the Xindi for a while now, seen the carnage they've left across the galaxy, entire planets burned to cinders." Jeremy felt his stomach drop. "So what can we do? How do we stop them?" "I have a plan, but I need your help," Marcus said. "The Xindi's tech all relies on an element called neptunium, extremely rare on Earth. But in the 80s, a massive deposit was discovered in an undersea cave network off the coast of Japan." "Let me guess. The Japanese government covered it up and kept it for themselves," Ethan said. Marcus nodded. "Bingo. But if we can get our hands on that neptunium, we might be able to engineer a weapon to use against the Xindi." Jeremy looked at Ethan, then back to Marcus. "So that's it then. We're going on a suicide mission to the bottom of the ocean to get some rare rocks while an alien armada bears down on us." "Nobody said saving the world would be easy," Marcus replied. They assembled a ragtag team of scientists and soldiers crazy enough to volunteer for the mission. Then they were off, racing across the Pacific in a rickety submarine as the Xindi drew closer every second. The descent into the abyss was harrowing. The sub groaned under the crushing pressure of the deep. Strange creatures darted past the portholes. Finally, they reached the coordinates of the cave system. Donning deep-dive exosuits, they entered the labyrinthine tunnels, pushing through with the roaring currents. Bulbous growths pulsed on the cavern walls. Bioluminescent creatures scuttled in the shadows. As they pushed deeper into the caves, an eerie feeling crept over the team. Colors seemed to blend and shift before their eyes. Sounds echoed in impossible ways. Memories from their pasts burst vividly in their minds. "Something's not right," Ethan muttered, shaking his head. "I'm seeing things, hearing things." The team looked at each other in confusion and rising panic, unsure what to make of the strange visions flashing through their brains. The cavern seemed to close in around them oppressively. Marcus unholstered his sidearm. "Stay focused. We need to keep moving before—" A blood-curdling scream pierced the dank air. The team whipped around, shining their lights at the source of the terrified scream. But there was nothing, no attacker, no body, just the empty, echoing caverns. The team's breathing grew ragged. Panic rose like bile in their throats. "We have to get out of here, now!" Ethan yelled. They scrambled back the way they came, frantically retracing their path through the winding tunnels as the walls seemed to undulate around them. After what felt like an eternity of desperate flight, they burst from the caverns, Neptunium clutched in their hands. The ocean pressed down, but the sub was a welcome refuge from the cave's phantasmagoric horrors. Days later, the team huddled in a dimly lit warehouse, the green glow of computer monitors painting their faces. Jeremy hunched over a workbench, soldering iron in hand as he tinkered with a strange device. "That should do it," he said, holding up the finished product. It was a small metal cylinder, roughly the size of a soda can, with a sickly green crystal embedded in one end, the Neptunium. "So that little thing is supposed to save us from a fleet of alien warships?" Marcus asked skeptically. "Not on its own," Ethan replied, gesturing to the blueprint pinned to the corkboard. "But if we build a big enough array of these and tie them into the global satellite network, we can create an electromagnetic field that will cripple the Xindi's systems." Marcus shook his head in disbelief as he stared at the schematic for the planetary shield generator. This was science fiction made real, a final, desperate gambit to stave off human extinction. They divided into teams, Ethan and the engineers racing to construct the array, Marcus rallying allies in the military to commandeer the satellites, Jeremy trying to unravel the Neptunium's quantum mysteries. But as they worked feverishly, reality itself seemed to fray at the edges. Ghostly figures stalked the shadows of the warehouse. Whispers of long-forgotten secrets echoed in the corridors of power. People reported blacking out and waking up miles from where they started. "It's getting worse," Jeremy said grimly, stubble covering his jaw and dark circles ringing his eyes. He jabbed a finger at a wall of news clippings. Strange lights in the sky, entire towns vanishing overnight. "The Xindi are in our heads, trying to break us down before they even arrive." "We'll be broken for good if we don't get this shield up soon," Marcus growled. "We're running out of time." He glared at the countdown ticking away on the largest monitor, an unavoidable reminder of their looming deadline. As the final components of the array slotted into place and the satellites thrummed with power, a convoy of black SUVs skidded to a halt outside the compound. Dozens of heavily armed agents leapt out, led by a figure radiating cruel authority, the Director. "This ends now," he declared, his words dripping with malice. "You've done well, but it's time for the professionals to take over." The Director revealed the horrible truth. He and his cabal had made a devil's bargain with the Xindi, selling out humanity for scraps of alien tech and promises of power after the conquest. "You bastards!" Marcus roared, reaching for his weapon. But the Director just laughed as his goons took aim. Jeremy, Ethan, and Marcus bolted, narrowly escaping a hail of bullets. They tore through side streets and back alleys, the Director's men hot on their heels. All the while, the visions grew stronger. Spectres of the past and glimpses of dark futures danced in their minds, clawing at the edges of sanity. They couldn't give up now, not when they were so close to salvation or doom. They had to activate the shield, no matter the cost. Racing against time and treason, they embarked on a desperate final mission, reality unraveling with each step. The world's fate hinged on the three unlikely heroes and the strange crystal from the deep as the alien fleet burned ever closer. Bullets ricocheted off the metal struts of the antenna array as Jeremy and Ethan crouched behind a control console, the Neptunium pulsing with an otherworldly glow. Marcus laid down covering fire, his rifle barking in short bursts. "Almost there," Jeremy yelled over the chaos, his fingers flying over the keyboard. "Just need to calibrate the final sequence and—" The facility shook as an explosion ripped through the outer wall. Xindi shock troops poured in, energy weapons flaring. Marcus tossed a grenade, buying them a few precious seconds. "Do it now!" Ethan screamed, firing his pistol at the advancing aliens. Jeremy punched the activation code and the antenna thrummed with power. The electromagnetic field exploded outwards, sweeping across the planet. In the skies above, the cloaked Xindi ships shimmered into view, their shields sparking and failing. But on the ground the effect was far stranger. The Neptunium's glow intensified, pulsing in hypnotic patterns. Anyone who looked at it fell into a trance, their eyes glazing over. "What the hell?" Ethan muttered as the Xindi soldiers suddenly stopped, staring slack-jawed at the crystals. Then, to his horror, they turned on each other, firing wildly. Across the world, reports flooded in of people succumbing to the madness, fighting in the streets. "We have to shut it down," Jeremy realized with dawning horror. They sprinted for the control room, but a horde of mind-controlled humans blocked their path, shambling forward with murderous intent. Ethan and Jeremy fought their way through, knocking aside their entranced attackers. Marcus followed, coldly efficient, snapping necks and cracking skulls. As they reached the control room door, he spun, aiming his rifle at Jeremy's head. "I'm afraid I can't let you do that," Marcus said calmly. "You see, I've been working for the Xindi all along, a sleeper agent planted years ago." Ethan snarled and lunged, but Marcus simply batted him aside. Jeremy stared in shock, his mind reeling. All this time Marcus had been manipulating them, sabotaging from within. "Why?" Jeremy demanded. "Because the Xindi are the future," Marcus said, "and humanity's time is over." Ethan tackled Marcus from behind, and they crashed to the floor in a tangle of limbs. Jeremy leapt for the control panel, frantically inputting the shutdown command. The two men rolled and struggled, trading viscous blows. Marcus's inhuman strength quickly overpowered Ethan, and he clamped his hands around Ethan's throat, choking the life from him. With a desperate roar, Jeremy grabbed Marcus's fallen rifle and fired point-blank into his skull. Marcus slumped, his brain splattering the walls. Jeremy rushed to Ethan, helping him up as the antenna powered down and the madness receded. But it was too late. In the skies above, thousands of Xindi landing craft descended, disgorging armies of alien warriors. The fleet had arrived in full force, ready to conquer and enslave. Jeremy and Ethan looked out over the burning cities, watching in despair as the Xindi began their assault. Humanity's defenses had failed. The end had come. But as Jeremy stared at the pulsing Neptunium, a desperate idea took shape. The crystal's strange properties had affected the Xindi too. Perhaps it could be turned against them somehow. He turned to Ethan, a grim light in his eyes. Their fight was far from over. The Xindi had come to conquer Earth, but they would not do so unopposed. Jeremy and Ethan crouched in the rubble of a collapsed parking garage, the makeshift lab cobbled together from scavenged parts and powered by a sputtering generator. Sweat poured down their faces as they worked feverishly to assemble the Neptunium device, the green crystal pulsing with an eerie glow at its core. Around them, a ragtag group of survivors labored in grim silence, a former NASA engineer, a brilliant quantum physicist, a grizzled army sergeant. They were all that remained of the resistance, the last hope for a world on the brink of annihilation. In the distance, the sounds of battle echoed through the ruined city as the Xindi forces clashed with the remnants of Earth's militaries. The alien invaders had already taken the major cities, their advanced weapons cutting through defenses like a plasma torch through butter. "We need to hurry," Ethan muttered, his hands shaking as he connected the final wires. "They're getting closer." Jeremy nodded, his eyes hard as he stared at the device. This was their last gambit, a desperate ploy born of desperation and the unraveling fabric of reality itself. The Neptunium's strange properties had shown them the way, but the path was lined with madness and uncertainty. A shout rang out from the perimeter, followed by the sizzling hiss of Xindi weapons fire. The soldiers were here. "It's now or never," Jeremy said grimly. He hefted the device, the metal cold against his skin. Ethan grabbed a pulse rifle, his face set in a mask of determination. They burst from the garage into a scene of utter devastation. Washington, D.C. lay in ruins, the iconic monuments blasted to rubble, the streets choked with debris and the dead, and amidst it all, a seething army of Xindi and their mind-controlled thralls advanced, a chittering tide of destruction. At their head strode a familiar figure, his form twisted and distorted. Marcus, now more machine than man, his skin laced with glowing Xindi biotech. He raised his weapon arm, a cruel sneer on his face. "Did you really think you could stop us?" Marcus laughed, his voice a metallic rasp. "The Neptunium is ours, Earth is ours. You've already lost." Jeremy and Ethan exchanged a glance, a lifetime of friendship and hardship passing between them. Then they charged, screaming in defiance, the device held high. They fought like men possessed, Ethan's rifle spitting streams of plasma into the Xindi ranks as Jeremy fought to get close enough to use the device. The air crackled with energy, the very molecules seeming to come apart as reality strained at the seams. Finally they stood before the Xindi leader herself, Elara, a monstrous insectoid creature towering over the battlefield. Her compound eyes glittered with malice as she raised her clawed hands. "Now, Jeremy!" Ethan shouted, wrestling with Marcus in a final desperate struggle. Jeremy lunged forward, the device held high, finger hovering over the activation button. This was it, the moment of truth. But before he could press it, Marcus broke free of Ethan's grip and lashed out, his metal fist slamming into the device with a sickening crunch. Sparks flew, and the Neptunium shard flickered. It was damaged, sabotaged. "You fool!" Marcus snarled, his face a rictus of triumph and madness. "You don't know what you're dealing with. The Xindi never wanted Earth. They wanted this." He gestured to the pulsing crystal. The invasion was just a cover, a way to get the Neptunium without drawing attention. And now that they have it, the real work can begin. Jeremy stared in horror as the truth sank in. They had played right into the Xindi's hands, and now with the device damaged, they were out of options. Elara chittered in alien laughter, her mandibles clacking. "The human is correct. The Neptunium is the key, and with it, the Xindi will ascend to heights you cannot imagine." Jeremy looked at Ethan, despair etched on his friend's face. They had come so far, sacrificed so much. And for what? To hand ultimate power to their greatest enemy. There was only one choice left, one final, terrible option. Jeremy gripped the device tightly, his thumb hovering over the cracked activation button. "I'm sorry," he whispered. Then he pressed down, pouring every last ounce of his will into the damaged machine. The world went white, a searing, blinding radiance that consumed everything. The device exploded in a cataclysmic burst of energy, the Neptunium amplifying the blast 1,000-fold. Elara screamed as the energy ripped through her, shredding her chitinous body like paper. The Xindi soldiers burned, their biotech melting and fusing with their flesh, and Marcus, standing at the epicenter, was simply vaporized, his betrayal meaningless in the face of annihilation. The blast expanded, a wall of destructive force that disintegrated everything it touched. Buildings crumbled, the very earth buckled and cracked. The Xindi command center, their ships, their armies, all were swept away in the blink of an eye. But the destruction didn't stop there. It kept going, an ever-expanding sphere of devastation that enveloped the city, then the country, then the world. Millions perished instantly, incinerated by the searing light. And at the heart of it all, Jeremy and Ethan, the device spent, the Neptunium drained. They had time for one final look, one last moment of understanding and acceptance. Then the light took them too, and they knew no more. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.